Persil liquid gets rid of greasy stains like this first time.
Relax, you'll make it.
This is good. Very good. See you next week.
Persil performs brilliantly, and it shows.
Carte noire.
Try to remember when life was so tender and dreams were kept beside your pillow and follow.
Carte noire. Un café nommé Désir.
But this is the best of feasts, bar none.
You're dead right, it is bar none. No feast bar, none at all. Here's one luscious ice cream, chocolatey biscuity bits, and even more toffee gooiness. And now it's 10% bigger.
We don't have to take that sort of stick, young man.
You're right, Wall's Feast Bar, the feast bar none, and no stick.
Pure softness for your woolens. Pure freshness for your cottons. Pure care for your delicates. Comfort Pure, a lightly fragranced fabric conditioner that's mild and gentle on your skin. Comfort Pure, gentle and mild. The best comfort care for your money, the Comfort Pure Refill Pack.
Operation Lazarus, the mind's mystery exposed.
Look at the clothes. The memory is adjusting back to childhood.
Here, boy! I can't imagine what interests we could possibly have.
I bet you can't.
There must be a treasure house waiting for us in Daniel's head.
Just you wait till you hear my offer, Professor.
I mean, it was as near as you can get to a plea.
You might as well give that man's head to the zoo.
Oh, get to it, Mr. Sills.
A conflict of interests in Cold Lazarus. Sunday at 9 on Channel 4.
Earlier today, Jamie Bowen was buried. As a change to our published programmes, later tonight, Channel 4 is bringing a special edition of After Dark, Britain's only live and open-ended discussion programme to consider the questions raised by her case. That's After Dark, 11:45 tonight, Channel 4 Live.
This is Channel 4, now without walls, beginning with a frank critique of comedy in the 90s.
In part 2 of the last ever Without Walls, fashion guru Vivienne Westwood is impressed by the Impressionists. First, Cosmo Landsman tells us to stop larking about in J'accuse comedy.
The English used to be famous for the stiff upper lips, but the face of modern Britain is plastered with smiles, smirks, and sniggers. These days, we have a neurotic need for laughter. We are determined to see the funny side of everything. Politics, poverty, famine, war. Have you heard the one about Bosnia? Life's a behatch and then you die. Ha, bloody ha. But the joke's on us. We've been tricked into thinking that comedy is good for us and that it's irreverent and iconoclastic. But the truth is, it's become a sacred cow. Well, it's time to get off our knees, get out the knives, and cut this beast down to size. These days, British culture is being flooded with comedy. There's an NHS laughter clinic in Birmingham, plans for a museum of comedy in Morecambe, the chance of a chair in comedy at Lancaster University, as well as 1,000 sitcoms, satires, spoofs, comic novels, and would-be funny plays, commercials, and documentaries. We're drowning in an ocean of laughter. Another day, another new TV program poking fun at the news appears. A new drama? Cast a comedian. Health education? Hire a comedian. Travel? History? Want to know how to fasten your seatbelt? Or even survive families? Maybe you prefer to read a novel. In the papers, the old lines between hard news and humorous features are fading fast. Comics have become the court jesters of the chattering classes.
If you're a newspaper editor and you want a new columnist, you sign up a comedian because they've got their ready-made wit and their routine. They can more or less sort of transfer it onto the page.
Whoever read the Peter Sellers or Tony Hancock column, or knew what Sid James thought of the Labour Party or world events? Name your topic and I can tell you what Ben Elton or Stephen Fry thinks.
There is an almost a world takeover by comedians. Sometimes it seems that comedians do everything on telly except read the news.
There are more comedians around, and I think the reason for that is marketing really, and the sort of agents and promoters and TV editors and marketing men have kind of taken over and more or less turned comedy into this kind of all-consuming monster that has to be constantly fed comedians.
America now has 24 hours a day comedy channel. There are many comedy clubs that are now beginning to shut down because people have had too much. It becomes overkill. And I think in about 4 years from now, we're going to that situation where it will go into overkill.
The Edinburgh Fringe Festival is now the Edinburgh Stand-Up Comedy Festival, in all but name.
Everyone's being promoted, everyone's got an agent, everyone's got their fly posters all over the Edinburgh Festival, and everyone's gunning for the big time, you know.
Comics have come to occupy a particularly prestigious place in our cultural landscape, one they never had before.
The government's got to raise revenue from somebody.
Somebody has to pay.
The government has decided. It should be you.
Program makers are now addressing an imagined audience of thoroughly mature, cynical, media-wise consumers who will simply reject any kind of direct approach. They will only take it from an ironist, somebody who has his tongue in his or her cheek and appears to be on the side of the audience. They don't accept any of this crap any more than the audience do. Somehow, if you're advertising or making a program about anything at all, then you have to have one of these people to say it for you. Victoria Wood has to tell people about the starving in Africa, or Jack Dee has to tell people what beer to drink.
We used to think of comedy as just another form of popular entertainment. Now it's treated like a miracle cure. If life's getting you down or you're feeling depressed, doctors and psychologists will tell you to try a dose of laughter. If what you see on the news looks too cruel to watch, don't worry, comedy will help you cope. And if your political leaders try to lie to you, you can always count on satire to show you the truth. Just who are they kidding? Well, you and me for starters. Comedy can't cure a thing, and satire isn't a subversive form, but a way of diverting political discontent into harmless fun. Comedy's not the best medicine, it's part of the disease. The satire boom of the 1960s looks like a blip compared to the alternative comedy boom of the 1980s, when otherwise sane, shy, and sensible people became stand-up comics.
The Oxbridge people were joined by people from all sorts of provincial universities, taking their satirical commentary into other areas, areas of personal politics, feminism, gay rights, relationships of all kinds, consumption, watching telly, you name it. It's now kind of ironized and satirized. It's a vast business.
Talking about, huge amounts of money. What you get, therefore, is a kind of very professionalised style of comedy, and a very kind of career-motivated comic, generally. I mean, you can't say that there's no innovation in alternative comedy now, and I would say that it is actually more inventive and better and less bigoted than, say, working men's club comedy or variety comedy. But it's still, you know, a kind of career-orientated thing.
Comedy's become an industry with careers, and people leave Oxford and Cambridge and other universities hoping to get a good job in it. You know, it's lost its surprises because it achieved a degree of cultural normalness, you know, and it just grew and grew.
One of the world's greatest cliches is that comedy is the new rock and roll.
The video of Newman Baddiel live at Wembley shows the apotheosis of the comedian as wannabe rock star.
We don't really have great film stars anymore. We don't have many great music stars, but we have great comedy stars. Teenage boys sitting in their bedrooms have posters of Newman and Baddiel on the wall in the same way that they used to have posters of Mick Jagger. They want to be the trendy black-clad comedian in the same way that they used to want to be the trendy black-clad rock and roll star.
Everyone wants to get in on the act. Even people who aren't in the comedy business want to show they've got what it takes to get a laugh. We've come to expect everyone to entertain us. Artists, politicians, athletes.
There is this business about sportsmen being entertainers, clowns, and something to be made fun of. I mean, Ian Botham is now going around, one of the greatest cricketers this country has produced in the last 20 years, is now going around in a pantomime show. And Geoffrey Boycott, who's also a marvellous cricketer, who cannot be a comic figure, is somewhat distrusted because he cannot be a comic figure. You know, it's as if you have to have this element of pantomime, this element of being funny, this element of saying something jocular.
In the art world, Duchamp's urinal spawned a joker's gallery of installation gag merchants with stuffed rabbits, pickled sharks, stained glass rectums, and cowboy shootouts, all relying on the same punchline. Yes, but is it art?
It's been common for quite a long time for artists to sit around trying to think of a new angle, a new gag. I would have thought the average conceptual artist probably uses in his whole career as many ideas as a good comedy scriptwriter might come up with in 5 minutes, say. Oh, it's great, isn't it? Once you're in the business of entertaining, you're very quickly driven towards attention grabbing, and that tends to be end up being rather trivial. You know, you put a piano upside down in the middle of the Tate and suddenly all its insides fall out with a big clang, and that's sort of quite entertaining, and everyone who saw it said it was wonderful. The children really loved it. But actually then you start wondering whether the Tate Gallery is going to start buying, you know, the complete works of Walt Disney and Thomas the Tank Engine on video and all sorts of other things that entertain children, and maybe just being lightly entertaining and a bit provocative isn't really enough.
There's a great whine that can be heard across the Western world. I want to be amused. What is this infantile need to be entertained all the time? Have we completely lost our sense of responsibility and perspective?
The danger of a life of constant humour and play and fun is that it's puerile, that it's juvenile, that it's adolescent, that it refuses responsibility. So to give you one example, it's no doubt a good laugh for teenage boys to go around impregnating teenage girls, but it's not a good laugh to have to change nappies and get up and feed them in the middle of the night and deal with the colic. So they bail out and leave them. So you get the pursuit of the good laugh, the humorous society, having a counterpart in the irresponsible society, because all you want is the thing that makes you happy, makes you pleasurable, and not a responsibility beyond you to people who may be affected by what your good laugh is.
Turn on the news and what do you see? Somebody else's nightmare. Starvation in Africa, slaughter in Bosnia. Confronted by the cruelties of our times, we shield ourselves with irony, take cover between quotation marks, and turn to black humor and bad taste jokes for comfort.
I like something to eat when I've had a drink. Honestly, I had 14 pints of lager last night. I felt like a tank in Tenement Square. I could have fucking murdered the Chinese.
Not just the old club comics, the young guns love bad taste too.
Have I gone too far? I don't know. Perhaps I have. But I don't know, I think cancer and cot death are things we should laugh at first of all, ladies and gentlemen.
I've laughed at disaster jokes, but often the laughter that you indulge in afterwards is left with this kind of, you know, spiritual bad aftertaste. You know, you feel this kind of nasty, lurky guilt feeling inside. I don't think that's a good thing.
I mean, if Hitler had Coke, there'd be Jews in the bathroom going, I know you didn't do it. I like your mustache. Fucking Himmler.
Everything is funny. Everything can be funny. There are no no-go areas. And that, I think, is all part of this, of this rise of the self, the rise of the fact that you must at all costs be allowed to feel good, and anything that stands in the way of your feeling good, anything stands in the way of your good laugh, must not be tolerated, must be stamped out.
We're making an appeal to our governments. Please cooperate with the National Democratic Front freedom fighters.
When this was broadcast in September, one hostage in Kashmir had been executed, and the others were still being held to ransom.
Our prospects for the immediate future don't look too good. It's too much. I can't go on. I can't stay with him any longer. He picks his toes and he's clearing his throat.
Do we really think that life is a cabaret? That every tragedy has its element of farce? Sure, comedy can help you to cope. It can keep your emotions under control and get your moral conscience to stop nagging and shut up for a sec so you can get on with your busy life. But you can't just alter the truth to make it palatable or remix reality so it doesn't look so revolting. The spectacle of human suffering should move us to tears, not just a witty riposte.
I think topical comedy is in the business of soundbite satire, is in the business of very, very quick jokes about personalities. I mean, I'm guilty of this myself in monologues because of the very brevity of the form means that you actually, it's almost like solving crossword puzzles. You get a day's news and you've got, so right, okay, action in Bosnia, 6 letters, 7 letters, and you come up with the joke, almost like solving a crossword. And that's because of the nature of that particular medium.
The world of politics was once a place of high seriousness. These days, the House of Commons is the most exclusive comedy club in town. Even bad jokes seem to pass for political debate.
My right honourable friend resigned from the cabinet because he was devastated that I had resigned as leader of the Conservative Party.
I think of John Redwood trying to convince us that he had a sense of humour. The funniest thing about him was the gang of people that he assembled behind him that day and what they were wearing. Because the best comedians are so liked, they're in fact loved and adored. People from other walks of life want a bit of that. John Redwood sees how loved, I don't know, a Ben Elton is, a Rory Bremner is, and thinks, blimey, if I were funny, would I be loved and adored in the same way?
Your spin doctors, your advisors are always going to say to the politician, you know, I mean, smile when you go on, you know, I mean, tell a joke, be light-hearted, because people like you when you're like that. You seem to come over as human. That's the way to do it.
What's going on here? These people are running the country, not the monster raving loony party. Everybody from Neil Kinnock to Cecil Parkinson has turned up on Have I Got News for You. It's as if they've got to show they're in on the joke.
Cecil, if you can...
Got to grin and bear it and pretend to be enthusiastic, because this is part of showing them, A, getting public attention, but B, showing themselves as nice all-round guys with a sense of humour who can take a laugh at themselves. That kind of approach.
I think of the carefully manicured witticisms of Angus Deaton and the arid cleverness of Armando Iannucci and his Saturday Night Armistice, and I wonder what's going on. There doesn't seem to be, even though it's about politics, there doesn't seem to be any politics in it, except a mockery of politics as an activity and the people who do it.
Political satirists are the high priests in the religion of comedy, the most venerable, For theirs is the role of chastising the follies, vanities, and vices of those in public life. Satire in Britain is seen as central to the workings of our democracy. Satire is our savior. Satire safeguards our freedoms.
More people are drawn into an argument, I think, if you actually make it in a way which engages them on a number of levels. Not only engages them on an intellectual level, but engages them on a humorous level as well.
If you can get the people, as it were, laughing at the politicians, you undermine them. But in undermining them, you don't destroy them. What you do is that you keep them in line, as it were, that you remind them that, that being pompous and arrogant, quite frankly, is not a suitable attitude to adopt in a democracy or indeed in any political system. So, a great one. And take the piss. That's the best way of doing it. And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
But who and in what way does it help? Has the rudeness and irreverence of political satire actually changed anything? No. Satirical comedy is a conservative force. Its savage mockery is nihilistic, not radical.
15-year-old persistent offenders can be locked up in young offender institutions, but only for a year. I shall double the sentence. And we also set up separate, secure centres for 12 to 14-year-olds who at the moment...
Jo Brand may not show much political analysis here, but it was enough to get her on to Question Time.
In a sense, the most effective satire that we've seen in the last 15 years wasn't from the comedians at all. It's what the tabloid newspapers did to Neil Kinnock. I think it was this caricature of Neil Kinnock as being henpecked and being sort of Welsh windbag, this sort of stuff. That was a satire that was carried out over many, many years, many months by the tabloid newspapers. And I think, whether or not you agree that it was the Sun what won it in the election, I think the personal satire, the caricature of Neil Kinnock, was a satire which Neil Kinnock did not benefit from at all.
George Orwell posed the fundamental question: is humour subversive or conformist? And he came up with the answer: it's conformist because it's a safety valve. It allows you to let off steam. It allows something that is building up not to be repressed, but to burst forth in laughter. But if you laugh at something, then you're not minded to go away into the street and start to change it, because you've released the pent-up tension within you about it.
If you're going to start looking at epoch-making satire, then you've got to look back to something like That Was the Week That Was, because that really did have an ability to shock, because it was so different.
Your policy, Mr. Brooke, has been one of trial and error. Their trials, your errors.
It permitted open mockery of government ministers, provoked a hail of complaints from Conservative MPs.
This is your life, and was theirs.
You know, it just shows, if you're Home Secretary, you can get away with murder.
The Postmaster General is going to have it stopped. And the story goes that he had a note waiting for him on his desk the following Monday from the Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, saying, "Oh no, you're not."
What reason did Macmillan give?
Macmillan gave the reason that it was better to be mocked than to be ignored.
Satire has encouraged people to see politics as an entertaining spectacle, always a farce, never a tragedy. Throughout the 1980s, a vast army of alternative comics and political satirists huffed, puffed, and poked fun at Mrs. Thatcher, and she ruled for 11 years.
You remember when her hand was ill all those years ago? The tendons in her hand were drawing in the fingers, this is true, to form a claw.
Even the king of political comedy often resorted to cheap invective.
Of course, Thatcher was brought down not by one of the funny men in spangly suits, but by one of the grey men, Sir Geoffrey Howe.
The satires on Mrs. Thatcher, which went on for 15 years, did not destroy Mrs. Thatcher. In fact, she may even have been strengthened by it, because she was regarded as a significant enough figure to be satirised. And if you look at Spitting Image, she was a very strong figure surrounded by a lot of weak puppets.
I will have a steak.
How'd you like it?
Oh, raw, please.
And what about the vegetables?
Oh,
They'll have the same as me. That'll be absolutely.
More than ever, it's just a question of finding the new targets. And if in the 1960s, the targets were these patrician conservative figures. In the 70s and 80s, maybe it was to do with Thatcher, it was to do with conservatism. In the 1990s, it's to do with market forces. The targets have moved on.
His basic salary is £663,000 a year, and mine is only £150,000.
And your salary is set by the government, of
Yes.
course.
Have you ever tried to live on £150,000 a year? It's next door to impossible.
Political comedy flatters the audience into thinking they're the chosen ones, the ones who see through the hype and hypocrisy of people in power. But when you go for the easy laugh, you don't have to think hard about right and wrong, left and right, or what must be done to make things better. Because at the end of the day, they're all a bunch of lying, boring bastards anyway, right?
That's the danger. That's what it's been producing. A cynical hostility in which all politicians are regarded as crooks, ne'er-do-wells out for themselves. The reality is that we are, in the main, decent incompetents struggling to do a job that's frankly too big for us.
We've swapped a reflexive deference for an equally reflexive suspicion. So whereas we automatically treated politicians with extravagant politeness before, now we treat them with automatic suspicion.
Comedy in the 90s has become a victim of its own success. Satire has become a victim of its own cynicism. How can the satirists expose the secret vices of the powerful when we don't believe them to be virtuous in the first place? Nothing the satirists can show us can surprise or shock us anymore. In a funny way, satire hasn't just run out of steam, it's run out of sacred cows to slaughter. Irreverence and irony have become institutionalized. Contempt and cynicism are the common wisdom of the age.
In summary then, oh no, Chris?
For a second night running, London's police are out in force clamping the homeless. The new measures have been in operation since Monday.
The predominance of comedy everywhere you look and that everything is being sent up does tend towards a culture of triviality in which important things are not given their due weight, and that there's a colossal ignorance around about what is really serious.
To say that satire doesn't have a place in the 1990s is to completely throw our hands up, say we're not interested in the political process, we're not even interested about thinking, we're just here now, let's be decadent, let's talk about ourselves, let's contemplate our navel, and let's leave politics to the politicians. That's a great mistake.
Comedy has hit critical mass. We are choking on quotation marks and overstuffed with parodies and spoofs. We've been sitting for far too long on the sidelines, smirking as history passes us by. It's time to wipe that silly smile off our faces and risk a return to seriousness before it's too late.
After the break, Vivienne Westwood and the birth of haute couture.
Dear Volkswagen, thank you for your recent advertisement announcing the price of the Volkswagen Golf. It really opened my eyes. My ex-husband and I have recently divorced, and as my part of the settlement, I had our new Golf, which my ex-husband assured me cost £12,500. How was I to know otherwise? I always thought Volkswagens were expensive. I mean, £10,695 seems so little for such a car. Now I know differently, and have acted accordingly. Yours gratefully, Caroline Napier.
The most important thing Goodyear has learned from Formula One racing is how to drive away the rain.
Every day, over 5 million people do exactly the same thing. Save for the future with Nationwide.
You can get